Okay, hello everyone. Whew. I am Cynthia, and I'm the host of the reality series CPS The Horror Stories. I'm not an attorney or a social worker, but I'm a mom who also went through a CPS case and have my own horror story. So today I'm with Alex. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and where you're from.
Okay. I'm Alex. I'm from Indiana, small town. Not really too much here. It's just fields and that's about it.
Yeah.
Houses. Apart from that, I'm a mom of three. I have a 10-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And
Wow.
then my fiance, Zachary, we've been together for 12 years. And we've made this crazy little family. And just, yeah.
Everything is going off all at one time, of course. I always have my phone off, and then just now, my husband's calling. I'm like, So, okay, let me get back into my mode here. Okay. So, tell me, why is CPS in your life, and when did they first come in?
They're actually not currently in my life right now. But we dealt with them back in 2020 when my daughter was born, unfortunately.
Which one? The 10-year-old?
No, it would be my youngest, the 2-year-old.
And what happened?
So pretty much, I don't know. Should I give a little backstory or just go straight into it? Okay.
No.
I don't know what I'm doing, so.
It's okay. It's okay. So let's
Okay.
take a deep breath.
Okay.
And have you always lived in Indiana?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is your very first ever encounter with CPS? Never dealt with them when you were younger or anything?
Nope, never. And then so obviously there's a big age gap between my children. So even with my first son, it was never an issue, not anything I dreamed of. Because even, I guess beforehand, you always hear about like horror stories about CPS, but it's usually like super abused children and things like that. So I'm like, and not to toot my own horn, but I don't abuse my children.
Right.
And I like to think I'm a good mom. Yes, days I yell and get frustrated, but everybody does.
Right.
But the extent of what they said it was like really threw me off. So anyway, before I go into that, I'll just back up a little bit. I had my second son in 2019.
Okay.
At the beginning of the year. And then I found out I was pregnant again at the end of August. So that was a surprise. I was like, oh my goodness.
Right.
I was not expecting this. So at that time, nothing was really a concern. The only concern I had was having them so close together. I have an iron deficiency, and I was always, that's something that just like played on my mind a lot being pregnant, because you read things online and like some things say, oh, you have an iron deficiency, you can bleed to death while you're giving birth. So I was like terrified. Right. And then having two back to back, I was like, well, I hope my body is bounced back enough. So when I first seen the OB that I seen, I told him this. And I said, pretty much, am I going to be okay? Like, I have a lot of anxiety right now. Just right off the bat, I told him that I have anxiety about being pregnant back to back again. He's like, well, we'll just, always make your appointments, keep an eye on everything. We always do, your routine stuff. And if there's anything else we need to do, we'll do it. I'm like, okay, great.
Did you have to see a perinatologist at all during a pregnancy, or no?
No.
Okay. And just in case anybody on here doesn't know what that is, it's a specialist for when you've had either unhealthy or scary pregnancies for whatever reason. I also am anemic, have iron deficiencies, and I have factor V blood clotting along with other health issues. So I always had to see a perinatologist with my pregnancies.
Yeah. Thankfully I never had to see one. It was weird because actually with my last two pregnancies, my iron was like super high, surprisingly. Mm-hmm. So that was really good. But yeah. So anyway, my pregnancy goes on and everything's normal, good, like it should be. And then of course, as we all know, 2020 comes around and here comes COVID.
Yep.
So that screwed a lot of things up, obviously, with appointments and things like that. So basically, we didn't have to deal with CPS until my daughter was born. Like, we were in the hospital, and this lady come right after I give birth to my daughter. It was like hours. It was an hour later, I believe, that the call was placed after I had her, and then it was just, I think it, I believe it was around like 5 p.m. when this lady showed up, and we're like, "What is going on? Like, why is this lady talking to me?" And she comes in and proceeds to tell me that she is there because they got a call saying that myself and my fiance have been reported for supposed drug use. And I'm like, "Excuse me?"
Now, can I pause and ask you, have you ever used drugs?
I mean, I have went before my first son, so 10 plus years ago.
Right.
I had smoked weed, and
Okay.
then we
So
used to drink recreationally, if I can
right.
talk. But other than that, no. Now, my fiance did struggle with it. He struggled with it when he was a teenager and then into his adult life, off and on. But even at the time where CPS was involved, he never did anything at home. I didn't know he was doing anything unless he told me. And I mean, he was honest with me and did tell me. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not okay.
Right.
And we went through different things trying to get him sober.
Now, just curious, was anybody else involved with that? That was like trying to use this against him?
That's a good question. We don't know.
And none of this would have been on his record, right?
Right. Yeah. He had told a few close friends and a family member that he would pretty much get a hold of him when he had relapsed, just for someone to talk to, people that understood, because I've
Right.
never done those kinds of things. So I wasn't sure what to say to him. And there was
Right.
even times where I had talked to like his cousin and was like, I don't know what to say to him. I don't know. Do I be mean? Do I play the tough love card? Like, what do I do? And pretty much it was just a matter of he had to make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Which when CPS come into our lives, he did make that decision and ultimately has been sober since.
That's great.
So really, that's the only good thing that come out of it. But
so, who made the initial report to CPS?
the report come in as anonymous, but this is where we'll have to probably backtrack a little bit, and it gets really detailed. My OB that I had trusted, I believe, made the initial report, because when we got the paperwork, there is a lot of information they had that come from his office. And I'll just kind of throw this out there. Like, it kind of, for me, I guess you could say it goes into a conspiracy a little bit. I mean, I don't want to sound like crazy or anything, but so at a certain point after we dealt with CPS and I started getting some information, I had gotten my medical records, because some of the stuff they were stating, I was like, just confused. Like, where is this information coming from? What is going on? And then one of the other things that was in the report, because of COVID that was going on, towards the end of my pregnancy, I had rescheduled one appointment, and then they had called and rescheduled me. I believe it was once or twice. And the one I rescheduled was for my very last ultrasound, because at this point, this is where COVID got super heavy, and they were cracking down on how many people could go into the hospitals, even for just regular appointments. Like, nobody could go in with you, this and that. So they call me and tell me that my fiance, my other children, cannot come in with me to my very last ultrasound for my last child. So of course this is emotional for me, and I'm like 7 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant at this time. So I was like, okay, let me just, do you think things will change within the next week or so, that they'll lift some of the limitations? She's like, I'm not sure, but if you want to reschedule, go ahead, not a problem. So I'm like, okay, so I did that. Well, come to find out later, because of my appointments being rescheduled, that is considered prenatal neglect. Something I had never heard of in my whole entire life.
What specifically was prenatal neglect?
I mean, I have my paperwork here. I can tell you. But pretty much they said it was because I had missed appointments or rescheduled them, and they failed to put in my notes that they had also rescheduled me. Like the doctor's office themselves called me one day because somebody wasn't in or something. I can find it here. Actually.
So I'm looking up prenatal neglect, and it says actually that there are no laws in the United States requiring expectant mothers to even obtain prenatal care.
That's good to know.
I mean, not that I suggest that, I'm just saying.
Right. See,
but
I thought
if you're calling and making appointments and they're not there, or you know what I mean, like you miss it for whatever reason, is that not understandable?
Right. I mean, especially like I don't get it, because especially like I said, it was during COVID, and I said it was my last child, and this is my last ultrasound that I was super excited about. And,
right.
But other than that, I had made all my appointments, and there was, like I said, different times where they had rescheduled me and then I rescheduled myself. But other than that, I made all my appointments.
Okay. Well, we have that on here. So,
yeah. So that was one of the other things. The other second major thing that they had brought up that they said was an issue, because like I said, she had said it was because of supposed drug use. Initially, when she had come to talk to us at the hospital, she just put it on my fiance, that she said the call come in and it was supposed drug use by the father, which was awful specific.
But who? Oh, so the social worker said that there was somebody called and said that your husband or fiance, whatever, is on drugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then she proceeded to ask if we would take a drug test, and of course we said yes.
Was there a warrant or court order or anything?
No.
And you know better now, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know a lot of things that I wish I would have known then. But yeah, so then she proceeds to tell us that she's going to need to check our house and all that bull crap, and talk with our other child, check our other child, because he was obviously of age where he couldn't talk or anything like that, so she couldn't technically interview him. So we're like, okay, we're just gonna go along with it. It's gonna be cut and dry. Like, we're not doing anything wrong. Our kids aren't in any danger, this and that. Well, sorry, this is probably about going to be the part where I cry. Before I get to this part real quick, we talked to her, we did the drug test, whatever, and she said, can I come back tomorrow and discuss this, and this with you? Blah, blah, blah. We're like, okay, fine, whatever. Pretty much she was wanting to interview my oldest child. And we had asked her, if you're going to do that, can we be present for that? And she said, yeah. We're like, okay, that's, we're fine with that. We're like, okay, that's fine. She's like, so when would you want to? Because they weren't letting us leave the hospital yet. I was like, well, we can do it as soon as we get home from the hospital. And she is telling us that pretty much she needs to interview him within 24 hours, I believe it was, of the call being placed. And I'm like, why? She's like, it's just protocol. It's just protocol. It has to be done within 24 hours. Well, my other two children are with my mother because I'm in the hospital with the new baby. So I'm like, okay, well, my mom is with them. Worst case, if you can't wait, like absolutely cannot wait for us to be home and be in the presence of our child while you're interviewing him, I want my mother there with him. Because I trust my mom. I know she's not going to let anybody say anything to him, or at least she can be a witness to make sure nobody's coaxed. This lady, we don't know, isn't coaxing him or anything like that.
And again, just to clarify, there's no court order or
nothing.
And this is just the social worker interviewing him, correct?
Yeah.
This is not an expert or anything like that.
No.
And at this time, your child was 8, you said?
9.
Okay.
And yeah, and at this point, she had just told us that pretty much it was just an open investigation. It wasn't even an open case. So we're like, okay, then why is all this necessary? Like, we were just super confused, but we didn't
legal, let alone necessary.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, we're just kind of in a whirlwind. Like, we just have this baby. We're in the hospital. We can't even leave. We can't do anything. I mean, we were just, baffled, and we're calling people, our family, like, what do we do? And they're like, we don't know. Like, we don't understand the gravity of what's going on right now. We're like, well, we don't either. So they're like, just play it by ear, cooperate, don't do anything or say anything wrong, but also don't lie, be honest about anything that's going on. We're like, okay, because there's nothing going on. We're like, our kids are not in any danger. They're perfectly healthy children, happy, crazy little children. So, the next day comes around, and she had come to talk to us. Yeah, the second day is when she is letting us know when she's going to go to our house to interview our son and this and that. And we had been talking to the doctors the second day on when we could leave, because we were trying to go home and see if they would discharge me and my daughter, so we could be there with our son while this lady's interviewing him, because we don't know her. He don't know her. He don't even know what's going on. So we're trying to get discharged. And after a certain point, they tell us that pretty much CPS had requested, I believe this is how they said it, requested that we be held. Either they did or the staff did. I can't remember exactly which one. It might have been both, actually. I think they were both had a hand in it. Requested that we be held for 48 hours at the hospital and could not be discharged until they got back my daughter's blood work results to make sure she didn't have any drugs in her system. Yeah. So, and then as you know, I'm sure you as a mother know that when you...
Didn't you already do a drug test before you gave birth?
Yeah.
And that was clean.
Yep. There was nothing in any of my tests.
Did they say you couldn't be with the baby?
No, we were with her the whole time.
Okay, I was making sure that they didn't make you leave her
while
you were doing all of this.
No, they did not. Thank God. That wouldn't have happened. It would have been, whew, they wouldn't have liked me at all if that would have happened. But yeah, so pretty much we had to stay there and wait. And then at this point, we started Googling, like, can you leave the hospital pretty much against medical advice? And that says that you can. And then we are talking to other people, and they're saying, well, if you do that, it makes you look bad and this and that. And we're like, okay, well, what do we do? So eventually we just decided to stay. And I called my mom and I was like, listen, they're not letting us leave. Like, they're pretty much saying they got to wait for these results to come in. And obviously I'm not just going to leave my baby here at the hospital. So I said, we're going to stay. This lady's coming to the house to talk with my son. She's like, okay, I'll handle it. No big deal. Well, we had made it perfectly clear to the social worker multiple times. And I believe my fiance was even probably crappy to her a couple of times, like just to get it through her head that he was not to be interviewed without my mother present. Well, that didn't happen.
And he shouldn't be anyways. I mean, he's a minor. There should be an adult there, especially because this is not court ordered and there's no therapist. There's no third person. This is not appropriate.
I mean, I don't know if she thought that just my mom being in the same apartment was good enough. I mean, it wasn't good enough for me. It wasn't good enough for my fiance.
Right.
And of course, my mom had my sister with her and her son, and then my son. So she's preoccupied. So really, I feel like she took advantage of the situation. Like, okay, she's dealing with her sister and these other kids. So I'll just go interview the other one real quick while she's busy. It's kind of how I took it. Because I had asked my mom, I said, did she tell you that you were supposed to be there with him? She's like, no. I was like, what do you mean no? I was like freaking out. I was like, no, we told her you were supposed to be right there with him while she did this. She's like, no, she just said that you guys said it was okay and went in the bedroom with him and talked to him.
Like, well, how would that make sense any other way? As if he was going to be able to be home alone. Oh, no, I just want my mom around the area. Like, it doesn't make sense. Of course, there's going to be an adult present somewhere.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It never made any sense to me either. And then later, which this is kind of a later thing that was brought up, but we had asked for a copy of the interview with him because when we started,
I said it didn't exist anymore?
No, I don't know. We never got it.
Right.
Point blank, we just never got it. We had even asked our public defender that we had about it. And I believe he said he would ask. But I don't think he did. I don't think he cared to ask because he pretty much told us anything we brought up later here at our court date. He just said, well, this stuff is in the past and you can't really change it. Your best bet is just to move forward. I'm like, okay, thanks. I'm glad none of this matters, that this lady probably just sabotaged us, but okay.
How long was the interview?
I'm not sure. I don't think it was very long.
Did your son ever tell you what was spoken about?
Not really. There is a few things in the report, like in the paperwork. It does say like a couple things that he said, but the way it's put in the papers, of course, it makes us look bad. So, and I know my son, I mean, he's a kid and kids pick up on a lot of stuff more than people realize. I have learned this over the years, even now with my little ones, like they're smart little things. Like some days they're saying stuff. I'm like, where did you get this from? Like who taught you this?
Right.
It like blows my mind. So if my son would have known things were wrong or off, he would have said so. At least to me, he would have been like he can tell even now still, like if something's going on and I'm upset, Mom, what's wrong? What's going on? He can tell when things are wrong.
So what was in the report?
She my light's not very good over here. I just see it. Pretty much oh, here it is. Nope, I don't. I have the right one. So right here. Okay, I about read something wrong. I was about to freak out. Never mind. Hold on. Catch my thinking back. So it says, during the interview with my son, he stated to her, supposedly, this is what was said, she doesn't really do anything with us. He's talking about him and his brother. After being asked what he does with his mom, when asked if he plays with his mom, he says, no, she lets me go play with my friends. She asked Jackson what his favorite things to do with his dad. he stated work on computers. She asked what he and his dad are fixing, and he stated dad likes to reset the password. And that's all, apparently, the whole nature of his interview.
So, does your mom play with? Well, she's 9 months pregnant, just had a baby, but she lets me play with my friends.
Yeah.
How is any of what you just said, how could it even be misinterpreted wrong?
I don't know. There was another part on one of the papers, I'd have to find it, where they stated that he supposedly told her that me and my fiance played video games most of the time and pretty much didn't pay attention to him. Yeah. Which at the time, like you said, me being pregnant, dealing with another child, when my oldest one would be busy playing video games himself, aka Fortnite obsession at the time. Yeah. Any parent in the world could probably understand that statement itself right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would, if the little one was sleeping, I would play Candy Crush, and my oldest one would come out after his games were done, get a drink and snack, and just try to run right back to his room. I'd be like, "Hey, where are you going?" Like, "Hi, nice to see you. I still exist over here." And he'd be like, "Oh, hi, Mom. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just playing Candy Crush, watching a movie because y'all are busy doing your own thing." But it wasn't ever, and even my fiance didn't hardly play video games at the time. He had slowed down for a while, and, he just really got burnt out on it. So I don't understand how she misinterpreted him saying that we played video games for the random occasions that we did at that time to that's like we're neglecting our child.
And not only that, but you know how kids are with their always and never words, like my kids, you're always working. You never pay attention to me.
Right. Or it's in the wrong time where you're busy doing something and they decide that one time, "Hey, will you do this with me?" It's like, "Well, I got my hands in dishwater. What do you want me to do?"
Exactly. And then, of course, they never forget that and they use it against you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And with him, he has always loved being outside, and he's like his dad. He even loves wintertime. Even now, still, he goes outside when it's 20 degrees out. And I'm like, "Dude, you're crazy. Why? What's there to do when it's 20 degrees outside?"
Right.
And him and his friends are out there running around. So as he's gotten older and where we live now, it's not the greatest, but he has made friends over the years since we've been here. And I wasn't ever going to tell him, "No, you can't go out and play with your friends," when mom can't do much in a condition of being pregnant.
That's when men did the best.
I was like, how does that make me a bad person that I let my kid go out and play with his friends? Like, he's being social. Isn't that a good thing?
Exactly.
I mean, I was confused, and he don't have issues with people. Like, my son is actually a very friendly person. He stands up for people. He is a loyal child. Like, when he makes a friend, he makes a friend. It's like his best friend. Once he clicks with somebody, it's on. And then it's like, "Hey, I want to go see my friend. I want to go see my friend. Can my friend come over?" And I'm like, sometimes like, "Hold on, dude."
Yeah.
So anyhow.
Really fast, Amber in the comments said, "My kids told the last investigator that I do not spank them, that when they get scared, we all sit in a circle and pray." I love that. They love cooking and reading with me. They have never witnessed domestic violence or drug use. I want to say something because this reminded me. I started teaching my kids how to cook at 2 years old because they loved being in the kitchen with me. Do you know what CPS twisted that into?
I can imagine.
Me parentifying, I believe that's the correct word, them, and teaching them how to cook so that they can cook for me and be my like little slave.
Oh, that's okay.
I have pictures of us cooking and like together, and them with the biggest smiles on their faces and flour everywhere, and
Right.
And then guess what else, Amber? So I too pray with my kids, and that would be the thing that we would do all the time. And my kids love praying. And CPS told me I was no longer allowed to pray with my kids. I was not allowed to bring it up. I couldn't initiate prayer with my kids.
See, that's insane to me, how they could even say that in the country that we live in, where we have freedom of speech and freedom of religion.
They said
like,
that
literally, it's been our thing.
They said that I was forcing my religion upon them. And I will never forget this. So we were at a visit, and I had forgotten my phone in my pocket. And I always had like random times in my phone to pray, just to like, you know, sometimes we just get going and we just need to stop and pray. You know what I mean? That's
right. Yeah.
Okay. And my kids knew this because we love doing that together. And so in the middle of the visit, my phone went off, and both of my kids shouted and ran toward me. It's time to pray.
Aww.
I looked at the monitor. I was all, because I didn't pray. I let them pray, and they both wanted to pray.
Aww. That's awesome. That's so terrible that they would use that against you, though. That's just so ridiculous.
Yes. And CPS says and does, like Amber says, whatever they want, whatever oh my gosh, I can't think of the word I'm trying to use right now, but whatever the narrative that they want is, that's what it's going to be, and you have no input whatsoever.
Oh yeah, we found that out the hard way, especially when it come time to remove the children, which was what I was about to get into next. Since I kind of rambled a little bit. No, you're fine. I kind of rambled too. So, yeah. So basically, she did the interview. My mom had called us and told us when she left, and we were like, okay. Eventually, I believe it was, the next day we still, unfortunately, had to stay that same night still at the hospital. And the next day at, I don't know, after 6, I believe it was in the evening before we got to go home with our daughter. So we try to just for a little while just breathe and pretty much forget that this lady come and was bothering us. We're like, okay, we finally get to go home. We're excited, get the baby ready, call my mom, get the boys ready so they can meet their baby sister. Like, at this point, we're just like, okay, push out the negative and let's just get home. So we do that. We get home, everything goes good for a little while, and then, okay, so I forgot to mention, I went in Wednesday to have her. They kept us till Friday. Didn't release us till Friday evening. Okay. Now, also, I knew things were going to be rough, just from a personal standpoint, because my son was still little. Like I said, he was still a baby when I had my next baby. So we knew he was going to need time to adjust because there's a new baby coming in. You always hear about it. So we knew it was going to be a big thing. And I knew it was going to be exhausting because I still got one kid that's getting up at night. And the new one's about to be up every hour or two to eat. So I'm like, okay, I can just take a deep breath. We'll figure it out, So I knew I was going to be tired. And then after the stuff at the hospital with the social worker, it just put more like emotional stress on me. It made my emotions way worse. After a while. So we're like, okay, well, we're going to take the weekend just to relax, enjoy the time with the kids. And like, that's what I plan to do. Sleep, rest, enjoy the babies.
Right.
That was my whole plan. Like, bottom line, that's it. No visitors. We ain't going nowhere. Like, this is what's happening. I'm just putting myself in my own little quarantine for the weekend. Like, just leave me be, people. You want to meet the baby, you're going to have to wait till I get some sleep.
Yes.
So that's what I had planned for the weekend. Didn't go like that. The social worker, proceeds to call the next day, almost all day long. And I didn't answer. Because I'm like, why do I have to answer this lady on a Saturday when she knows we just got home? I just had a baby 2 days ago. What does she possibly want from me? So the first few calls come in, I'm like, I'm not answering. Like, I don't care what she thinks is so direly important or what's going on, but I'd like to spend time with my children right now. So I'm not answering. Well, the phone keeps ringing, and eventually I just get mad. I'm like, all right, you know what? Screw it. So I answer the phone. I'm like, hello. Talk to her, pretty much find out what she wants. She proceeds to tell me that she wants me to sign paperwork to, I can't remember the name of the stupid paper at the moment, but she wants me to sign this paper to release my daughter's medical information to her. And doesn't give me a reason why. And I'm like, okay. And at first I'm like, I had asked her why, and she didn't tell me. She's like, well, we just need to make sure everything's okay with the baby. I'm like, well, the baby's fine. We were released. She has her appointment coming up the beginning of the week. After her appointment, I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
So, okay, we do that. Well, she had come to drop these papers off, and I didn't answer the door. So she just left them at my door. I'm like, okay. So I get the papers and I look it over, and I told my fiance, I said, I'm not signing these.
What were on the papers?
I should have it right here if you give me 1 second. And then after she had dropped it off, I had actually texted her and told her, I said, I am not signing this, at least until I talk with a lawyer, because I didn't understand really the gravity of what it meant or anything and why she needed it. Like I said, she failed to tell me that, so I didn't feel comfortable signing it. So I was like, I'm not doing it. And just to throw in there, to this day, the paper is still not signed. Never did sign it. Where's it at? What is this one? Oh, I got too many papers right here.
And again, what were the papers?
It was for me to sign
for the baby's records, right?
Yeah, for her medical records. And at first it was confusing because it's like she was just born 2 days ago. What medical records can she possibly have?
Right.
Besides like her weight and stuff like that and her vitals. Like, so it was really just more confusion also at first. And like I said, she still never explained to me why she needed it. So, if I can find it, I will read it word for word. I'll still kind of glance through while we're talking. Yeah, it was on Saturday when she dropped the paperwork off. Like I said, we just had her, the new baby, and I knew I was going to be tired, which I was by the time the weekend was over. And then, the beginning of the week comes around, my oldest son has school. So I have to get him up for school, and I get him up, send him off to school, go back to bed, and don't think anything of it. Hold on. There's a date right here. Where'd it go? I just had it. Let me get back here. I'm trying to find the right paper. Make sure I have the right one. Where'd the date go? I lost it. That's what I get for keeping all these papers. I can't find anything. So, let me see. Anyway, so Monday come around, I sent my son off to school. I had went back to bed for a little while. Oh no, I'll find it. Seriously. Okay. So this would have been the 14th of April.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it was the same day. He went to school, went about our day, did whatever. I slept off and on when I could. And then when it got close to time, him getting home from school, I stayed up for the day because I knew here in a couple hours, I'm going to have to make supper. I'm going to have to do this, help him with his homework, whatever, just typical day for me. And then, the babies are sleeping about the time he gets home. So I'm thinking, yeah, if he's got homework, we're going to knock this out. Like, well, he didn't. So that was good news. But get around to making supper. It's a little after 6:30. And somebody proceeds to pound on our front door. I look out the door. Here's a social worker. I look out the patio door and there's cops at the patio door. They're pounding on both of my doors. And at first I'm like, I'm not letting them in. Like I seen they knocked and I told my fiance that they were there. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not opening the door. Like, why do I have to?
Right.
So he's like, okay. Well, then it goes from just basic knocking to them like literally pounding on the freaking door. Like to the point where my neighbors were looking out their door to see what was going on. And they knew we had just gotten home with the baby, so they were a bit concerned.
Right.
Like somebody trying to bust down their door while they got babies in there. What's going on?
Yeah. Or maybe somebody thought that something was wrong with you and they're trying to get in.
Right.
Nobody
knows. And behold, it's CPS and the police officer.
Right.
So I had told my fiance, I'm like, you know what? This is ridiculous. Like, I'm sure the whole building can hear them pounding. So take a deep breath. We'll open the door, see what they want. Can't be that bad. Like, we haven't done anything wrong from Friday to Monday.
Right.
Like, we've given her this information, talked with her about things. Like, we haven't done anything wrong. Well, I thought wrong. She comes in with the cops and proceeds to tell us she is there with a court order to an emergency court order to remove our children. And of course, we're both standing there dumbfounded. And like I said, I was making supper. So I was making hamburger helper this night because it was quick and simple. And I didn't want to do much after just having a baby. And it's half done. And I have to shut it off because the police and the social workers in my house telling me she's going to take my kids. And I just immediately start bawling. And I'm like, why? What is your reason? And she just goes on to say that she brings up the prenatal neglect. Well, and then informs me that morning, Monday morning, she knew this and I didn't. That was the day I was supposed to take my daughter in for her very first checkup after I had her. Well,
Monday was?
Yeah, Monday morning. Me being a tired mother, just having a baby on Friday, I thought it was Tuesday. So all because I got the day mixed up, she thought I wasn't going to take my daughter in to get the care that she needed. Yeah. So between that and then the allegations of drug use, they decided that was enough to come take our children.
Was there actual proof of the drug use?
No. Well, when she come back, so when she come back to take the kids, they had gotten our drug test results back at that time. Mine come back clean, and my fiance's did not. His had, I don't remember what the levels were, but from him using previously before we went to the hospital, he still had stuff in his system.
What was he using, if you don't mind?
Meth.
Okay.
But, yeah, so, I mean, he hadn't, obviously, like I said, done it beforehand, but he had prior to that, however many days, and it was still currently in his system. So, and even, I can probably get to this in a little bit, the second test he took, his levels were like a fraction of what they originally were. because he had quit using. So, but yeah, she said that was why. She was going to she wanted us to take another drug test while she was there to remove the kids. And of course, I'm just like hysterical. I'm bawling because I don't understand any of this. Like, what even, like, why she even had
Why
to get the
wasn't
court
there an
order in the first place.
option? Right. Why wasn't there even an option to have him like removed for a little while, you know?
That's a good question. We asked
And
her that. We had asked them that, you know, and I hated to even have those words come out of my mouth. But
well,
at
yeah,
this point,
but
I was like, I don't want my kids to leave. So I was like, would it be okay? I mean, would it matter if he leaves and it's just the kids here with me? And she's like, no. At this point, we are going to open a case and it's both of you are the perpetrators.
you know what's crazy is when my case was first opened or investigated, they came because my ex-husband was on meth, but very abusive, violent, and everything. But yet they had us separate, and I had the kids, and we couldn't be around each other because we were toxic because of his drug use. However, he had first rights to the kids if I had to go into the hospital or anything like that. And even in his care, our children ended up getting molested by his friend. But it blew me away that he was allowed to have any type of alone time with our children.
Right. Yeah.
And was this court order signed and stamped by a judge?
Yes. Yeah, I have it right here. I mean, I don't know.
Just curious, do you have your children back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty much we had to go through all the bull crap with CPS for about 8 months, and then they finally closed the case.
What was the judge saying during this whole thing?
Funny you should ask. Well, originally, after they took the kids, this paper here says when our court date was. Our first court date was the 16th. And just a little quick side note, the kids were with my mom. They did get to go with her because she was direct family, and they did everything they had to do to get the kids to go there. And thankfully, where she lives and where I live, we're only about 10 minutes away from each other. So that was a blessing that, you know, they didn't have to go anywhere else.
So your mom got to have the kids for the 8 months.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Not quite 8 months after. I'll have to count in a minute how many months it was. They did get to come back home finally. But she was
they didn't
still
have to go to foster care.
right, and they didn't have to be with strangers or anything like that. And my mom didn't live like a state away or anything. So
were you still able to like breastfeed if you wanted to and all that? See the kids often, or did you have?
Well, we had asked her that because yeah, I was trying to breastfeed. Personally, I can't breastfeed for very long. I don't produce enough. But I always try to at least the first month. I do as much as I can because
Right.
especially, you know, most of your doctors always tell you the colostrum and all that stuff is so good for your kids. I'm like, okay, well, if I can't do it for too long, I'm at least going to do it at the beginning and try and pack all the nutrients in there. Let's get the ball rolling. So, yeah, we had asked this lady, we're like, well, what are we supposed to do about feeding her? Because if she's at my mom's, I can't feed her. She's like, well, you can pump and this and that. We're like, okay. Like, and I expressed to her, I do not produce a lot. So I can't pump and get a 6-ounce bottle and leave that with my mother, like, that's not an option. It's just not going to happen. Like, I don't know. My body don't like me sometimes, and it just don't cooperate.
Well, and it also has a lot to do with the stress that you're under. Like with my daughter, I could barely produce milk. I could hardly pump, but like if she nursed, she would get at least enough, to satisfy her. But then I would have to supplement a little bit with formula as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I had to do with my kids. So yeah, we had asked her, and actually even my mom like pushed it. She's like, she needs this bonding time with her. She needs to be breastfeeding. So like, what can you do to make sure that this happens? Because I don't want her being away from the baby and that disrupting the bonding time with her baby. I don't want that. So she said, let me talk to my supervisor, blah, 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 and we'll let you know. So she comes back and she's like, okay, my supervisor said that as long as you're breastfeeding, you guys can be with the kids from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at your mother's under supervision. We're like, okay, that's great that I get to be with the kids, but still not nearly enough as I want to be. Like, why just till 8 o'clock at night? So pretty much just until after supper, and then try and put your children to bed at 8 o'clock. Like, excuse me, I have an 8-year-old. He's not going to bed at 8 o'clock.
Right.
And then I have another 2 babies that are still getting up through the night. Like, they're not going to stay asleep. I can't do that.
Poor mom, too.
Right. I mean, my mom, she's not a spring chicken anymore. I love her, and she'll probably kick my butt for saying that. But she knows she's not. So even at that time, it was hard on her, and I felt terrible. But there was nothing I could do. And then the worker had failed to tell us until after, I believe it was like 3 weeks, that as long as we were supervised by my mom, it didn't technically matter if we were at her house or mine. So the whole 3 weeks, we're like scrambling every day to get up at 8 in the morning, hurry and get to my mom, and then to leave on time to go back home, because we think we have to absolutely be there to be with our children. And then she tells us 2-3 weeks later, oh no, you could have been at your house with your mom. I'm like, oh, thanks. So my kids could have still been in the comfort of their own home this whole time. And you just now tell me this? After uprooting them, bringing the cops to my house, taking them from me, and making us go through all this crap already. And then you decide a couple weeks later, it's a good time to tell us we could have been hanging out at my house. Like, that's lovely. But then also, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I was rambling again.
It's okay.
When the cops come and the social worker come to take the kids, we, of course, like I said, I was hysterical. My fiance, he was just pissed that it was even a thing. He had asked the cop, the officer, because we asked her, apart from the court order, we're like, what grounds do you have to take our children? Like, what is your reason? She's like, well, your drug test results and then prenatal neglect, because I had missed her appointment. So at this point, I believe it was him that asked, he's like, well, how do you know we missed her appointment? She's like, well, the doctor's office told me. And he turns around, looks at the police officer and says, isn't that illegal for her to get minors' medical information without our consent?
HIPAA.
Yeah. So after he said that, when he asked the officer that, the officer was just shitty. He was rude. He didn't give a crap about anything. Pretty much the word drug was involved, and we were the worst piece of trash on the planet, and our kids deserved to be taken. Like, he did not care. He had no sympathy towards anything that was going on. He's like raising his voice at my fiance because he is trying to get a question answered from the social worker, and she is just rambling bull crap, like not answering our question at all about how she found out we missed her appointment. And he's like, you can't fight her on this. Stop asking. You can't fight her. We're here with the order. Your children are leaving. This is what the officer had said to my fiance while trying to get answers on why she had our daughter's medical information.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was terrible when they come to get the kids. Like I said, the officer was terrible. I couldn't stand her. I still can't, thinking about it,
Yeah.
Of course, like I said, again, I was hysterical. I was crying. And she had asked us if we would submit to another drug test. We're like, yeah. Like, what choice do we have at this point? You done made us do drug tests. You're using it against us. You're taking our kids. So sure, why not? Let's take another one. It was kind of just a smart ass thing. We're like, okay, fine.
Right.
Well, I'm bawling, waiting on my mom to show up. And she had just asked if we would take the drug test. She's like, okay. She starts pulling them out of her little nifty, stupid bag. We're like, okay. Well, I'm crying as she's getting these out of her bag. I walk down this little hallway. We're in a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay. I walk down this little hallway to the bathroom where my toilet paper is sitting on the edge of the counter closest to the doorway to get toilet paper to blow my nose because I'm bawling and I've got snot coming out my nose.
Right.
And I walk out and the social worker is meeting me halfway down my hallway. And the look on her face, like she is like death staring me, like, what are you doing in there? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, I was just checking on you. She assumed that I was going to the bathroom to use mouthwash or something in case I was doing drugs to try and dispute the drug test.
Was it a mouth swab?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I get if that happens, but you've already got my first drug test result and it was clean. So why are you even worried right now? I was like, I literally did this move. I put my hands up almost like she was the cop. And I said, I'm not doing anything. I'm getting toilet paper to blow my nose if you don't mind.
Right.
And I walk right on past her and let her follow me back out. And she hands me the mouth swab. And I just, sure, I'll take it after you want to follow me in my own house to my bathroom because you think I'm so terrible.
Right.
Oh, that just irritated me so bad. Excuse me, sorry. So,
well,
you had asked what the judge said. The first time we had went to court, we didn't actually go because COVID was going on, so everything was over the phone. We didn't get to meet with anybody. The public defender, it was all over the phone. And at first, the public defender, I was talking to him, and he's like, well, I have experience with CPS cases. So, and a lot of times, he pretty much talked himself up real good. And I was like, okay, well, this guy sounds like he knows what he's doing. So, okay. So we go along with it. Tell him, okay, you can take our case. Help us if you can to get our kids home because there's no reason this should even be happening. The first call, like when we did the court call, pretty much we had to just admit to everything and nothing else was to be said. And if anything else was said, it was shut up. Like my mom has the call actually on recording. She recorded the whole thing just in case, anything was said by the social worker or anything else that disputed what had already been told to us.
Right.
Because this had already happened multiple times. She lied about stupid little things and just said things to manipulate us and make us feel like, oh yeah, there's no reason to worry. Like we're not going to do anything. And then randomly she shows up and takes our kids. So right off the bat, we didn't trust her because she didn't do anything that she should have. So, yeah, the court call, the judge had asked a couple of different questions. And like I said, the public defender said pretty much we had to say yes or no to what was being said. If we said no, pretty much we had very little chance of getting the kids back. So it was like, admit to it or don't get your kids back. Anything.
Right.
So when they're asking me about prenatal neglect and, stuff like this, I have to admit that I somehow neglected my children. And I remember the judge asking something to the nature of the accusations. And I said, what was that? I think it was I believe it was about her doctor's appointment, about missing it. And I said, yes, I did miss the appointment, and I go to explain it to him, and the public defender's like, no, stop. No explanations right now. Yes or no answers. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I really can't defend myself right now. Like, what is this? I mean, is it, I didn't get it, and I'm like, how am I supposed to, at that point, after that call, I really felt defeated. It was like, okay, well, how are we going to do this? Like, I can see how this is going. They're not going to listen to anything we have to say. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, I was just in shock. Like, okay, you can make these accusations and all of this, but then you can't give me a chance to defend myself.
Right.
And then one other thing, after I had gotten my medical records, this is where the conspiracy part I mentioned at the beginning comes into play. Apart from prenatal neglect and all that, somehow it was in my medical records that I did have drugs in my system. Even though I was not doing drugs, I have all of my paperwork from my OB, like I said, my medical records, drug tests included. And I have the tests from the social worker that I had passed all those. Supposedly, I tested a very low amount, very, very low, of methamphetamine twice during my pregnancy. Now, remember, I told you twice because it's important, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Yeah, so I didn't know about the first time because my OB never told me. When the second time it supposedly happened and I had something in my system, he did tell me. And I'm like, okay, how did that happen?
Right.
Like, I was like, dude, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm just bawling. Like, I didn't sleep very well the night before because I'm coming to the end of my pregnancy. I didn't feel good. And I'm just like, what do you mean there's stuff in my system?
Right.
He's like, well, you tested positive for whatever. And I'm crying. I'm like, how does this happen? He's pretty much just playing it off like I did something and just didn't want him to know about it and wouldn't admit to it. So after a few minutes of trying to discuss anything with him, I'm emotional and distraught, and I just let it go. Well, this is part of the stuff they had CPS used against me later on. This is why they were so adamant on drug testing me, which we didn't know at first until I had gotten my medical records. Like, before, I had my daughter and CPS was involved, like I said, he did confront me and discuss with me that I had stuff in my system the second time. And this was in January. Okay. Point this out real quick. It was at the end of January where he tells me I supposedly have drugs in my system. I have my daughter in April. If you look online of how far back the testing goes for a baby's umbilical cord and pretty much if drugs can still show up in a certain time frame. And pretty much it's like 4 months. So I was right in between that 4 or 5 month mark.
Right.
Where if anything would have been in my system, it should have showed up in hers. Nothing showed up in her system. So I was like, okay, if I'm pregnant and supposedly using drugs, why is it not in my baby's system? In her umbilical cord. Because that's not just a little finger prick of fresh blood test. That's her umbilical cord you're testing. Like that's
right. It's like a hair follicle test.
Yeah. So why was it not there in her system when it was supposedly in mine? And then that is the reason why they held us at the hospital and did not tell us until way later. We found out for ourselves. Yep. And then the thing about it being twice, apparently I had found out through somebody else, and I did look it up online. You have to, for an OB to have the right information or the authority to call CPS on a new mother, you have to test twice positive for drugs within your pregnancy.
Wow.
And after I had gotten my medical records, the first time was supposedly on October 14th, which this is a funny day. Not really funny, but the date is, what's the word I'm looking for here? Specific, I guess, because first of all, it was my younger brother's birthday. And second of all, it's the day we moved out of my mother's house into our 2-bedroom apartment. So overall, it was a decent day. We had got up that morning and we got our oldest off to school. Yeah, sent him to school, come up to one of the stores, got a money order for our apartment for the deposit. Get the deposit, go straight back to my mom's, waited on her for like an hour or so. She comes back, brings us lunch, and then head the other way to my OB appointment. Now, mind you, I found out I was pregnant in August, so this is only like my second appointment. Possibly the second or third appointment.
Sorry, just to let you know, we only have a couple minutes left because we're already over our time. Just so you know.
Okay. So yeah, this was just my second appointment, and supposedly this is the day, I'll just cut it short. This is supposedly the first time I had tested positive with drugs in my system. And it was when we got the medical records, it's like, how is that even possible when I was with my fiance all day? I don't do drugs, first of all.
Right.
And second of all, I was with my fiance, and then I was with my mother all day, and then I was with my younger brother and other family moving into an apartment. So it's like, how would it even have been possible to do anything?
Right.
When I was so busy that day. And I've told people before, like, I get people that are addicts make time for stuff
well,
like
and not only that, but I'm not sure if you're aware, like meth can insert your body through skin. So if you had touched something, and being that,
yeah,
he uses.
Yep. I actually am glad you brought that up because I forgot to mention that earlier. When the social worker come and she had brought up, when they come to remove the children, actually, she had brought that up, that it was dangerous for him to be using. Even if he wasn't using at home, it was dangerous for him to use and come home and, interact with the kids because it could get onto them through contact.
Yeah.
So after hearing that, he's like, well, wouldn't it be the same for her? This is my fiance asking the social worker and pointing to me. He's like, so if I went to my friend's house and used drugs and come home and kissed her or had sex with her, wouldn't it be in her system? She's like, no, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, it doesn't work like that because it's me, but it works like that if it's the kids. Yeah. So apparently somehow I'm not supposed to be affected by it, but the kids are.
Right.
And then, So we also found out later, like I said, OB had to have 2 reports of drug results or whatever, being in somebody's system while they're pregnant to report it. Well, after about a month goes by, and while we're dealing with CPS, because Zach had tested positive and like she was telling him the numbers, we didn't quite understand it. He asked her about it one time. He's like, well, what is the actual cutoff? Like, what would you still consider a number or whatever being registered on the drug test? And she gives us this number. We go back and look at my medical records. The number she gave him on the cutoff of where drugs show up in the system is the exact number that was in my medical records. The first one, October 14th, was spot on the exact same number. And the second one, I think it was like 2 numbers up. So it was changed a little bit.
Right.
So it's like, if a mother is using drugs, supposedly meth, and you go from October to January, this whole time being pregnant, going to appointments, getting a urine test every single time to check for drugs and other issues, how does it happen that only 2 drug tests are bad and they're right at the cutoff line?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't either. To this day, I still don't. It
Right.
makes no sense. That's why I said at the beginning, I feel like it was partially a conspiracy, because I feel like the OB, I mean, he very well could have taken somebody else that was dirty and put it with mine,
They
because
should have just done a hair follicle. That would have said everything. And just for everybody watching,
yeah.
it's also very important to go have your own studies done, your own drug tests and everything by your private doctor as well. So, but we are really far over the time, and my daughter is having a reaction at school, so I have to go pick her up now.
Oh, okay.
But it was great meeting you. If you have other things that you feel we missed and want to share, we can always do, a second follow-up. So I'm really glad that you have your kids back. And again, everybody needs to know their rights. If social workers are at your door and they don't have a signed, stamped court order, warrant, anything like that, you don't answer the door. You don't have to do any services prior of a judge telling you to do so. So know your rights and be prepared for that knock. So, all right. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing. It was a pleasure talking to you. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was really cool.
Great. Thank you so much. And goodbye, everybody that's watching.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.